And the offseason's officially underway, just like that. Uh, Sorry for the raspiness in my voice. I came down with the COVID, so that's why my voice sounds like this right now. But Edwin Diaz left yesterday, and now it's Pete Alonso. So it sucks. It sucks for Mets fans. David Stearns is taking a huge risk right now. He's kind of sticking his middle finger to the fan base. But, we got to trust him. We got to trust him because the Stearns nerds, they say we should trust him. And quite frankly, we have no other choice but to trust David Stearns at this point. We don't. He might have a big trick up his sleeve that he's planning. And listen, does it suck? Am I upset that Edwin Diaz and Pete Alonso were both gone? Yes, 100%. I did think one of them would at least come back. I said it even before the season ended. I said, I did criticize David Stearns, but I still had faith in him because, he did take us to the NLCS in 2024. And yes, was a lot of it Billy Epler guys. And I'm one to say that, yes, a lot of those guys were Billy Epler guys, but he still made some key moves. Obviously not trading like a Jose Quintana and keeping a Jose Quintana was huge because he came up big. The Luis Severino sign and the Sean Manaea sign, that all paid off in 2024. And then in 2025, it seemed like he tried to almost replicate that, and to no fault of his own, because, I did want Sean Manaea back. A lot of Mets fans did, but he signed a Frankie Montas, and every Met fan didn't like that. Taking a risk on a guy like Griffin Cannon, and I'm not saying he should have went out and handed Corbin Burns $1 gazillion for $1 gazillion years or signed Blake Snell for that massive contract he got with LA. But I think, just consistently banking on these like pitchers almost out of a trash can to try to resurrect their careers is going to come to bite you. And it came to bite him last year. He went big on the trade deadline in the reliever market. I don't think I can fault him for that. Ryan Helsley just fell apart. It was a good trade. I liked it at the time. Tyler Rogers, that was a good trade. Gregory Soto, I liked the idea because he was dominant against lefties. And you would think if the Mets got to the playoffs, Soto would be, a big guy out of the pen, because you look at the Dodgers, they have dominant left-handed bats. The Phillies, Schwarber, Harper, so many lefties that they got as well. So it made sense to even go after Gregory Soto. But what I didn't like from Stearns is the Cedric Mullins trade when Harrison Bader was on the trade market too. And look what happened. Harrison Bader was having a great year. And I'm not even faulting him for not signing Harrison Bader in free agency. Also, I am a little bit because he signed or traded for Jose Siri to be the Bader replacement. But I'm not even faulting him because Bader had a bad year last year, but Bader was having a good year in 2024, sometime in 2025. So sometimes you just bank on that guy continuing to have a good 2025 rather than banking on Cedric Mullins to come to New York and somehow turn his career around. So it really started last offseason where Stearns just kind of started losing faith in the fan base. And now you take into account he lost Edwin Diaz to the LA Dodgers of all teams. And that's a whole nother story that I'm going to get into. But Pete Alonso obviously going. I'm going to talk about Pete Alonso first because he meant more to me, and I think he meant more to a lot of Met fans than Edwin Diaz. Being drafted here, his rookie year, breaking that home run record, 53 home runs, breaking Aaron Judge's record the year after Aaron Judge set it. The home run against the Brewers, that's probably everybody's favorite moment. And then obviously this past season, where he became the Mets all-time home run king, like Pete Alonso ate, slept, and breathed orange and blue during his time here. He wanted to be here. He consistently talked about it. Like, you can make the case that Edwin Diaz didn't want to be here. I know for a fact that Pete Alonso wanted to be here. And at some point, he realized as much as he wants to be here, he wants to set himself up. And he got a massive contract, 5 years, $155 million, more than Kyle Schwarber got. Good for Pete. He got his deal. Everybody faulted him and clowned him for declining that 7-year deal with the Mets he was offered a few years ago. Well, now he blew that out of the water. Granted, it's not 7 years, but he was the highest paid first baseman last year, and now he's the highest paid first baseman again for the next 5 years. Good for Pete Alonso. I'm happy for him, and I'm not mad at the Mets for not getting him. I'm a little slighted by the Mets for not even making an offer because Joel Sherman came out and reported that the Mets didn't even try, but I'm mad at that, but I'm also not mad at it because I know if they made a 3-year offer for Pete Alonso, he wasn't going to take it. And did he get a massive contract? Yes. Do I wish the Mets, said, screw it, we'll take a risk. We'll give him that 5-year deal? Yes, I do. But, as much as it hurts, I think letting Pete Alonso go for that number is the right thing to do long term. Short term, not so much, because short term, David Stearns put a lot of pressure on himself. There's Kyle Schwarber is gone. Pete Alonso is gone. And now the only guys that are left is Kyle Tucker. And as great as Kyle Tucker is, he doesn't play. Like Kyle Tucker he gets hurt a lot. So he's going to get a massive contract, Kyle Tucker. Right now, the Blue Jays are in the sweepstakes with Kyle Tucker, and he's projected to get over $427 million. I get it. He's 28 years old. Going to play all next season at 28. Or actually, he's going to turn 29 in a few days. Playing every game next year at 29. But he's only played over 150 games twice in his career. Out of 8 seasons, only twice. The most home runs he's ever hit in a year was 30. Career OPS is an 865. You're going to give that guy $427 million when somebody 2 years older who has better numbers overall. Like, I know he might not have better seasons. Like Pete Alonso never had a year like Kyle Tucker did in 2022. 2023. But he did hit more home runs than he hit. He never had a year like Kyle Tucker did in 2021 when he had a 917 OPS. But he hit more home runs, drove in more runs, and he played more. And he would make a lot less money. And he's only 2 years older. So that's where I'm like, I don't think the Mets are getting Kyle Tucker because he doesn't play a lot. And I know he won a Gold Glove in his past, but when you look at the metrics, because everybody loves to look at the metrics, well, look at the metrics for Kyle Tucker. He was not a good defender the past 3 years. 3 years, consistently. Bad defender. He hasn't been a good defender since he won a Gold Glove in 2022. So I take that all into account. The money, the fact that he doesn't play, the fact that he's not consistently a good defender. I don't think the Mets are giving him $427 million plus to come play in New York. I just don't see that. So Stearns is taking a huge risk because I don't see him getting Kyle Tucker. And then you can go after Cody Bellinger, and I would love Cody Bellinger. I think Cody Bellinger is a perfect fit for the Mets. He can play center, he can play left, he can play right, he could DH, he can play first base, and he's a great defender. He's a great athlete at all those positions. But he is also 30 years old. He's coming off probably the best year of his career since he won an MVP back in 2019 with the Dodgers. But like I said, contract year, best year of his career. He had an 813 OPS, hit 29 home runs, 98 RBIs, 272 batting average, a phenomenal year, and did play in 152 games. But at the same time, Bellinger had a terrible year in 2024. In 2022, he had another subpar year, had a 654 OPS, 2021, 542 OPS. Like, this is not a guy who year in and year out plays like a top-level outfielder. So that's the thing. You're taking a risk with Cody Bellinger, too. Now, I'd rather take the risk of Cody Bellinger than Kyle Tucker. I would, 100%. I think it makes much more sense, especially now that you lost Pete Alonso. You want to have Carson Bench make an impact on this team potentially next year. Kyle Tucker would force Bench to go to center, and I think the Mets kind of want Bench in left field. I do. I think the Bench will be a corner outfielder. He came up. He was drafted as a corner outfielder. They moved him to center because they thought maybe, hey, we're never going to be able to trade Brandon Nimmo. They can finally trade Brandon Nimmo. They did. Now Bench, he can get another corner outfield spot. So the Mets have two options. They can take a huge risk and go for Kyle Tucker. They can go after Cody Bellinger. You got Motaka Murakami from Japan, 26 years old. He's young. I would be intrigued by that, but that's also another major risk. As great as he was in Japan, that doesn't mean he's necessarily going to be dominant like he was in Japan in the MLB. You can go after Alex Bregman, which I don't think is a huge risk because Alex Bregman is kind of the guy out of those four, I should say, them four in total. Out of those four guys, Alex Bregman is probably the most consistent guy in terms of playing, putting up consistent numbers. The defense is great. It's phenomenal. But then what do you do with Brett Baty? Do you trade Brett Baty? Do the Mets even want to trade Brett Baty? I don't know. So David Stearns is taking a huge risk, and I have no clue where he plans on going. No clue. But letting Pete Alonso walk and letting Edwin Diaz walk, he decided to say, hey, you know what? I could either sign both these guys, add a few more pieces, and we could probably go to the playoffs. Because all they really needed to do is keep those two guys, add a few starters, and they go to the playoffs. It's really all it probably takes. But instead, he's like, nah, that's not good enough for me. I'm going to let those two walk. And I'm going to take a huge risk. And I'm going to do it my way. He's doing it his way. I don't know if his way will work. I want it to work. I'm rooting for it to work. I just don't know if it will work. And yes, I want to address this narrative too. The narrative that, let's get into Edwin Diaz now. The narrative that Edwin Diaz he wanted to leave the Mets just because he didn't bring back an offer to the Mets. I think that's stupid. I mean, in Jacob deGrom's case, deGrom wanted to leave, but the Texas Rangers also said, no, you're not going to any other team. You're not going back to the Mets. You're not going to negotiate with anybody else because once you do that, we are pulling this offer off the table. So deGrom accepted. That could have been the case with the Dodgers. Who knows? And Stearns was playing his cute little negotiations, which may work in the long term. But in the short term, the Mets got worse. They have gotten worse this offseason after missing the playoffs. They lost, in my opinion, their best player, Edwin Diaz. Edwin Diaz is going to be harder to replace than Pete Alonso. And that's just a fact. Because as great as Devin Williams was and can be, as great as Robert Suarez could potentially be if he signs here, none of them will be able to do what Edwin Diaz does, and that's put trust in you that every time he comes out there, 9 times out of 10, he's going to get the job done. Even when he loads the bases, he's going to get the job done. So that's the thing I was shocked by, seeing Edwin Diaz go. And to any fans saying he didn't want to be here, you can have that take all you want. But at the end of the day, it was the Mets that didn't want him as much as the Dodgers. The Dodgers wanted Diaz more, and that's why the Dodgers got Edwin Diaz. It's plain and simple. Just like the Baltimore Orioles, that's why they got Pete Alonso. Pete Alonso, 100%. I think everybody knows deep down Pete Alonso wanted to come back to the Mets and finish his career out. He said it multiple times. You could see it. You could see it with him, with his body language, with his facial expressions. Pete Alonso wanted to retire a Met. But the Orioles wanted him much more than not only the Mets, but then more than any other team. And that's why Diaz went to the Dodgers, because the Dodgers wanted Diaz more than the Mets did. Plain and simple. And I still think the Mets can win without those two guys in 2026. I still think that they can make the playoffs, but not with the group that they have right now. They need to add a Bellinger, a Bregman, a Tucker, a Murakami, at least one, maybe two. And like I said, all of them have flaws of their own. All of them. Like I said, Tucker has only played over 150 games twice in his career. He has never hit more than 30 home runs. Never. That's a flaw right there. Barely plays, and he doesn't have as much power as everybody hypes it up to be. Bellinger. Bellinger, he's coming off the best year he's had since he was an MVP with the Dodgers, but at the same time, you look at his numbers in 21, in 22, and in 2024. In his last 5 years, 3 of them have been terrible. Terrible. Now, maybe he figured something out, but maybe he benefited from being in the same lineup as Aaron Judge and having that short porch down in right field. Alex Bregman is probably the safest bet, but then what do you do with Brett Baty? Do you trade him because you can't move him to second because you have Marcus Semien lined up for second base? Unless maybe you plan on moving Brett Baty to the outfield, which he hasn't done, I think, since 2022. Could do that. David Stearns took a big swing. He took a big swing. He's actually in the middle of taking that big swing, I would say. Because we don't know if he hit or if he missed. We don't. But right now, we're going to, he's in the middle of that swing, and we're going to find out soon whether he's going to hit it or miss it. But right now, it seems like he's going to miss it. Because I don't think with them not willing to go, 3 years, $75 million for Diaz or an extra year for Diaz, why would they give Kyle Tucker $427+ million like he's projected to get? How would that make sense? I know they have money to spend, but it doesn't mean they're just going to spend it on the best guy available right now. Maybe they want to save it for next offseason when a guy like Tarek Skubal's available. Maybe they want to make a trade for a guy like Fernando Tatis. They have options to still get better, but will they try to get better? Or will David Stearns employ out Brett Baty at third, Lindor at short, Semien at first, Mark Vientos at first, But there's still guys available. Ryan O'Hearn is still available too. I would love a Ryan O'Hearn on this team. Put him at first base. I mean, I think the best bet for the Mets would probably be like Ryan O'Hearn and Bregman or Ryan O'Hearn and Tucker. Because you're not getting Tucker and Bellinger. That's expensive. That's out of David Stearns' budget. David Stearns ain't spending that much. It's going to be interesting to see what they do. It sucks that Pete and Diaz are gone. But before I go, I'm going to address this whole core thing. The core is rotten. The core is broken. That's what everybody has been saying. I'm happy that Pete and Diaz are gone because the core was broken. That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. The core is broken? So was the core of the Mets the reason the Mets sucked in 2025? Was the reason the Mets sucked in 2025 because their best hitter and with runners in scoring position was Pete Alonso? And their best player overall was Edwin Diaz? Is that the reason the Mets sucked in 2025? Or was the reason the Mets sucked in 2025 because their starting pitching couldn't go more than 4 to 5 innings? Was it because their starting pitching was absolutely horrid to the point where it was once a week where you would get a legitimate start, and that was once Nolan McLean, a rookie, got called up? Or was it the fact that the Mets signed Frankie Montas and the fact that they didn't go after a Jose Quintana, or the fact that there's so many reasons the Mets sucked in 2025, but Edwin Diaz and Pete Alonso were not one of them. They were not. Now, you want to say there's some players in this core that needed to go? I could see Jeff McNeil. I could even say, yes, Brandon Nimmo, okay. I'm not a fan of the Brandon Nimmo trade. I like Nimmo, but you know what? It clears up some money in 3 years. Okay. Cool. Make that case. Whatever you want to do. But to say Pete Alonso, who had 38 home runs, had over an 850 OPS, 270 batting average, best hitter with runners in scoring position, to say he wasn't a winning ball player? Pete Alonso's not a winning ball player? Look at his numbers in the postseason. Just look what he did when it mattered most in Game 3 of the wild card against the Brewers with their season on the line in the 9th inning. Pete Alonso's not a winning ball player? And now Edwin Diaz isn't a winning ball player either? Remind me what Edwin Diaz did in 2025. Oh, yeah, that's right. He was dominant. He was there when the Mets needed him most. Remind me what he did down the stretch in 2024. He was the only guy we wanted to see out of that bullpen. The only guy. So you can say the core is rotten all you want, but Pete Alonso and Edwin Diaz were not rotten. And they're not the reason that the Mets sucked in 2025. The reason the Mets sucked in 2025 is because David Stearns signed a guy like Frankie Montas, traded for Cedric Mullins over a Harrison Bader, missed out on signing David Robertson to add to a bullpen. Those are moves that didn't help. So if you're going to blame Edwin Diaz and Pete Alonso for not winning, then you might as well blame the guy who made the moves on the moves that did not turn out well. I mean, Jose Siri, did that turn out well? Did Cedric Mullins turn out well? David Stearns is taking a huge risk because if the Mets miss the playoffs like again next year, he's going to be on the hot seat. I don't think he's going to be fired, but I think he'll be on the hot seat. And if they start off slow, let's say in 2027, he's gone. He's taking a huge risk. Huge risk. The offseason is not over, and I'm not going to judge this offseason just yet. Right now, I'm not feeling good about it. I don't think any fan is really feeling good about it. How could you? You lose a guy who is one of, if not the best offensive guy on your team last year. I know Juan Soto's numbers looked better, but with runners in scoring position, in clutch situations, Pete Alonso was the better guy than Juan Soto. I'm not saying he's better than Juan Soto, but with runners in scoring position last year, there's no denying Pete Alonso was better. And then Edwin Diaz, who's probably been their best player since 2020. So that's that. David Stearns taking a risk. Let's see if it pays off. All right. I'm out of here. Sucks. Last 48 hours have sucked. COVID, Edwin Diaz gone, Pete Alonso gone. Last 24 hours, really. Last 24 hours. All right, I'm out of here. Deuces.